Welcome to the Village Mentor Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Glenn. In this series of episodes, we'll deep dive into two key categories: nature connection and creating a healthy sense of community. As a listener, you will be brought to that place where nature and community come together. You've probably heard the phrase, "It takes a village to raise a child." But what does it take to raise a village? Or better yet, what does it take to raise a nature-connected village? That's been one of my driving questions for the past 2 decades, and I'm excited to share this journey with you. Hey folks, before we get started, if you are a nature mentor or forest educator, or you want to be, check out my Patreon page where you'll find video presentations that will help you build your skills and effectiveness. You can find the link in the show notes or the podcast about section. My guest today is Justin Pegnataro. Justin is a nature mentor, a writer, an ecotherapist, and in his past he directed Two Coyotes Wilderness School, where he connected people to the wildness of nature and the wilderness of their own internal landscapes. Justin now works as an ecotherapist with clients. His work focuses on helping his clients discover who they are, tap into their wildness, claim their personal power, and to find a deep sense of belonging within their own communities and with the more than human world. So Justin and I met probably 10 years ago, and we've had the opportunity to work together in nature immersion programs in Vermont. All right, so I'm here with Justin Pegnataro. Justin, good to see you. Thanks for being here. Good to hear you.
Yeah, Kevin, thanks for having me on the Village Mentor.
Yeah, so this podcast, I started it as a way to discuss village creating. And I see that as a couple things: people connection, nature connection. And I think part of that is recognizing that we each individually have certain gifts or vision or purpose that we bring into the world, and that within village, that's where we can really manifest that with being around others. And that part of the role of village, I think, is, and this isn't just me saying this, but thousands of years of human history, is that village is a place where we can help each other manifest that, where part of village life is seeing and bringing out, hey, what are those gifts in each other, and providing a place for each individual to, manifest, to express their personal vision, their personal gifts. And I think you probably agree with that and understand that to some degree or very deeply. So I wanted to start off with just asking you, instead of like an easy, "Hey man, what's up?" I wanted to start with going a little deeper. So Justin, tell us, what's your personal vision in the world? What's your purpose? And how is that manifesting in your life? So, just a nice, easy softball here.
Oh yeah, I'm jumping right in. Love it. Yeah, I resonated really deeply about this aspect of the village that you're talking about, of the seeing the gifts and helping them to emerge. And for many years, like you, have been involved in nature connection schools, and Two Coyotes was the one I have been most involved with. And I remember one day we were with a mentor of mine. We were saying, like, what are the superpowers if we were all like superheroes? And then he had said to me, I think your superpower is that you can see the potential and the gifts inside people that they're not even aware of yet. And you can bring those to the surface and to fruition. And so very much like you were saying with that, I really do feel like one of my missions is to help people go inside into the depths of their heart and into the unknown, and to meet with those places inside themselves that could be scary or that hold wounds, but also hold great treasure and power. And they're just waiting to be healed in some way that they can open up and let those gifts out. And so that's one um, piece. And I'd say there's another aspect of my
Mhm.
work, um, which is looking in the world right now and how humans are so out of sync with the natural cycles of the world. Um, how can we co-create and grow again healthy culture? And so that's also kind of a life focus uh, of
Yeah.
mine. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. So tell me more about that. Like, how do you do that? And like, how is that coming into fruition? You have the ecotherapy work that you do, and like, how does all of that, like, how do you do that with people?
Yeah. The yeah, within the ecotherapy work that I do, really both of those aspects are part of it, the culture and community building piece and the personal kind of exploration and journey. And within the culture building, um, there's certain like universal human kind of like ways of being that if we look back in like the historical record, most of our time as human beings has been spent as hunter gatherers or in groups that have lived in more like woven into the landscape, having to live in uh, a sustainable or regenerative relationship with the land. And so like
Hmm.
at those groups historically and contemporary, um, what are some of the universal aspects of culture that show up again and again and again? And things like reverence for elders or singing sacred songs or ceremonies and gatherings and celebrations that coincide with certain natural rhythms and cycles of the earth, honoring and ceremonies to welcome in people at different life stages from birth to adolescence and adulthood to death. Um, So how can we revision these, not take them from other cultures, but how can we revision these in a modern context that fits into our lives, that really hits these really important notes of what it is to be human? And and so some of the work that I do in ecotherapy groups is to experience different aspects of these and within our greater community in Connecticut to create some of these opportunities like an ancestor feast or solstice and equinox celebrations or an ecological grief ceremony. Um, and so that's kind of
Hmm.
like in part this cultural piece. And then there's the kind of more depth of exploring the inner realms, but also our
Hmm.
connection to nature too. So um, within the ecotherapy, there's this aspect of, and this is particularly in like my view of ecotherapy, because ecotherapy
Hmm.
is broad. It spans from like equine and animal assisted therapy to outward bound adventure therapy and forest bathing. Um, but because of our work with nature connection and and village building, it takes on a much more kind of rewilding flavor to it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, because I know for you and I, the nature connection piece is like obvious. It's like, oh yeah, of course, nature connection is important to cultural mentoring, is important to village building, is important to being human. But I still hear, and there's a lot of people who are still kind of trying to make that connection. Like, what is it about nature? Like, do I really have to go out into nature to know myself better, to connect with other people? Can't we do that without nature? Um, and I'm just wondering like how you might respond to that, like what is it about the natural world that is so integral to that community building and connecting with people element.
Yeah, I think we've never, like, historically, we've never really been separate from nature. And
Mhm.
there's this concept that we're like, that we're separate from the natural world now, and that we can choose to go in it or not go in it. Um, and so we're so far removed that it's so vital to find that reconnection. And the natural state of being human, I think, is being in relationship. And so, of course, I can hear the trees' voices and them talking to me. And of course, I talk to the ravens, and of course, I leave offerings in the forest of gratitude. And so there's just a different way of being in the forest, that instead of being like an alien moving through an environment where I don't belong, I'm actually surrounded by my kin. And
Mm.
there's such a deep sense of belonging to something so much greater that is, I think, just vital to the human soul. Maybe it's one of the reasons why loneliness is such a epidemic for
Mm.
us today.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is just a theory, but I mean, it's also just based on thousands of years of human beingness in the world and evolution that to be fully whole humans, we need to connect to nature because we are nature. And, looking at it scientifically, we've evolved through nature. Our senses were designed to perceive the natural world, our bodies, our brains, even, we are whole when we are part of that environment. So, yeah, for me, it just kind of makes sense that we would need that as part of our whole to be a whole human being. And I know that can be kind of like maybe scary for people who aren't as connected to nature or but I think it's also like a hopeful thing because when we go in nature, we know also there's a lot of science and data on how healing it is for us. I mean, there's tons of articles and papers and books. Richard Louv really blew the doors open on that years ago with his first book. Um, and all this data on how healing it is to just look out the window at it, nature or have a plant in your house. And then, gosh, if that's healing, imagine walking out and sitting by a tree, and listening to the bird song and feeling the sun on your face. Yeah. So I think that's just like all the signs are there, the data is there. It's all like right there. Like, hey, how do you feel when you walk in nature? You feel pretty good, don't you, afterwards? For most people, they can at least acknowledge that. Like, yeah, if I go for a walk in nature, I feel more peaceful and my mind is in a better place. Um, so really, I think what we're talking about is just like taking that a little bit further. It's not much of a bigger step. It's just we're just putting it out there like we need to look at it all and just start having this discussion of like, yeah, what if we are nature and what if, that plays a part in who we are and as human beings in the world.
Mm, I love that.
Yeah. So back to the ecotherapy, why are people coming to that and what are they getting out of that?
Yeah, you know, connected to what you were saying about how we are nature and the importance of being in nature, the modern world that we have created is kind of like, it's filled with stimuli that's really foreign. In fact, like, and it's like filled with like our own, like, human nature being hacked, right? Like continuous scrolling on social media feeds, like, and fast food. Like, our innate drives are kind of hacked to yield profits for some corporation.
Mm.
And we're in these rooms with four walls and fluorescent lighting, and there's all of these really micro stresses. And there's this aspect of getting further and further away from what it means to be human. There's this, like, domestication factor, um, that's happening. And so, like, our human lifestyle today is much more sedentary than it used to be. It's much less connected to nature for many people than it used to be. And so I think the value of ecotherapy is this aspect of like reclaiming our wildness, and instead of falling prey to um, you know the social media and just living a life of screens, really, you know, and artificial environments, that there's a way to really kind of like get in touch with your true wild nature and find that spark and bring it into the
Hmm.
world, and to find your place within the world.
Hmm.
All that other stuff is not trying to help you to find your unique thread in life, or how you're
It's not. Oh crap.
yeah.
What am I doing? So we started off discussing a little bit personal vision and purpose, and you sharing yours. And what is that? I think we're hearing that more often. Like usually we hear vision in the terms of like this person's a visionary, and it's usually like someone who's like a CEO of a company, and the company's doing really great, and that's a visionary. And it kind of holds this that up on this pedestal, like it's only a couple brilliant minds in the world. But I think that couldn't be further from the truth. It's we can see certain people and how they're manifesting that. And I'm also interested in who are those people that nobody knows. Very few people know them, but I've met people where they've never been on social media. Their name isn't out there in the world. They're not making millions of dollars or six figures, but man, they're living their vision and they're living with purpose and they're loving their life and they're helping so much the handful of people around them. Um, and I think it's important to tell that side of the story that, so yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Like, what is vision, personal vision? Maybe we can just like start there. Like, what do you think that is, and how does that show up for a person? How does one know that?
When I was a boy, I wanted to be a soldier, and I
Mhm.
one morning I told my parents I want to fight and die for my country. And
Mm.
I don't. That's not my goal anymore. But the
Yeah.
big thing about that warrior aspect, and the at that time when I was a boy, and wanting to give my life for something greater than myself.
Mm.
And for me, this aspect of vision has always been really important. What is my purpose, really? And how can I give myself? And I think we can have a lot of kind of dreams. And but if it's a dream that is like focused on personal gain, I don't know that it's a vision.
Hmm.
Something about vision that is it's for the people.
Mm.
And so this aspect of like vision is like it's a quest. And there's an aspect of offering. And that offering is like, I'm willing to offer my life for this.
And not even so much offering like I'm I'm ready to die for it, which you might be, but I think it's more about offering the time and energy of my life, right? Is
Yeah,
that what you mean?
exactly. Exactly. And it
Hmm.
begins this quest, I think, that when we when we offer ourselves in that way, and we let the world and the more than human world know that we are serious about this, there's something that moves, like we're moving towards the unknown of what is my purpose. And yet at the same time, our purpose somewhere out in the darkness starts to move towards us.
Mm.
Yeah. And
Nice.
it's through, all the treasure I think is off the trail. If it was on the
Mm.
trail, it'd be found by someone already.
Mm.
And so there's this requirement that we kind of need to get lost in order
Mm.
to find it. And it becomes this adventure of following these clues, that it's a mix of like intuition and call it chance, but maybe it's fate.
Mm.
And our passions. And I think through that, somehow, we stumble onto these encounters with some kind of image. Bill Plotkin calls it the soul image, but some kind of image of what our purpose or our destiny is, and what it is our unique way of being a thread within the tapestry of all life. That when we step into that role, we can not only be living our truest way of being in the world, but we can be providing for the thriving of all of the other threads in the web.
Mm, beautiful. Yeah, and something you said there made me think. You said something about how it's a quest in the earlier on there, and it reminds me that one of my teachers spoke to this once, and it was like this big aha moment. I don't know, for me, and it was that a lot of times we think of once we get into this concept of vision and like, oh, I have a vision for my life and what is it? And we're exploring it. And then we find that, which vision is like, I don't know, in one level, like what we see our places in the world and where we can make the most impact. And what I'm talking about here is the quest part is that that vision is going to evolve. It's not stagnant. It's not the same. And man, that was so good for me to hear because I've started to see that shift. And at first, if you're not aware of that, that's coming, that it's going to evolve and grow, then it can be kind of like scary, like, uh-oh, like what's happening? My world's falling apart, like, and it may just be that your vision is shifting, because the world is not stagnant. Nature is not stagnant. Even our society isn't stagnant. I mean, there's so much evolution all the time playing out and change and shifting. So, of course, our vision is going to evolve with us. And depending on who we are, but not just who we are, but where we are in the world and who we're around at that time. If we move to another state or another country, that's going to shift a little bit. So, yeah, I just wanted to share that part of it, right? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was thinking back to when I was 19. I remember turning to my friend and it's like, I want to start a nature school. And then, when I was 27, I was able to begin a nature school. And in the beginning, it was very much about teaching like nature-based skills and getting people connected to nature. But yeah, through the process of my own deepening and growth, the vision became like around helping people to have access to their own gifts and skills and dreams for the future and creating a culture of belonging. And it deepened and grew in ways that I couldn't imagine before that, but evolved and are continuing to evolve. Um,
Hmm.
so
So you started acting towards that vision. It sounds like it wasn't fully clear, but as you worked towards it, it became more clear or full. Is that what you're saying?
yes, yeah, yeah. It evolved and deepened in complexity and beauty and impact in ways that I couldn't imagine when I started. Yeah.
Hmm. Nice. Yeah, I have a similar thing as well where it was in my teens. I was like, I want to start a nature school. And I didn't fully know what that that meant. I just knew I was into the outdoors and I didn't even have a lot of skills. But yeah, I went into that, learned, took a bunch of classes and then started a school. And yeah, I agree. Like that, because for me, that vision kind of grew and evolved. And I was like, oh man, this is like more than I could have imagined. And I'm also just saying this for those out there listening who might be like, well, I don't know what my vision is, but I'm excited about this thing over here. And it's kind of like, well, paying attention, I think part of finding vision is like feel into your body, your heart, your passions. Like you were saying, like, what are your interests and your passions and starting to follow that. And I think that's step one, right? Like, or maybe there's another step before that, but it's an early step,
Yeah.
listening, following that calling that you have, and then seeing how vision kind of like is created along that path towards it.
Yeah, yeah, that coming together of vision, all these little like it almost reminds me of like in the fairy tales, like there's like a little trail that you're following through the forest, picking up these little clues along the way, leading to something. One of the things too with I think finding our purpose is within our culture, there's often kind of like an over focus on like this big thing that someone creates, like, you know, and then I think that some of the truest essence of our purpose is just like our way of being, our unique way of being within our village, and the gifts that we have to share and offer. But it a lot of times we can confuse the vehicle, like the way we choose to offer our purpose into the world, with our purpose. And so, someone's purpose may be to be able to listen so well that people feel like they belong and they're truly heard. And that a person could create a whole organization around that. But a person also could just be available within their community. So I just want to put it out there that vision isn't always this kind of like, you know, grand structure that's built. It's the way we are.
Right. And it might not, and it doesn't always equal a career path. Career path can be very different than vision and purpose. And I think that's another trap that sometimes we get in is it's like, oh, my career is supposed to be my vision and purpose. They're supposed to all be one and the same. And if we go back to what we were saying earlier about humans and nature and we are nature, well, vision and purpose has been around a lot longer than our economic system in our societal systems that says you need this career. So they don't always mesh. They don't have to. They can. Some people, when they manifest their vision and purpose, it can lead to, a career path. But yeah, there's a lot of people who are like, I go to this office and I work here all day, but when I get off work, I go do this other beautiful work in the world and I'm helping all these people. And it doesn't have to cross.
Yeah.
So I think that's really fascinating.
Yeah. One of the places that is a really kind of a fruitful place to begin searching for purpose is those hurt and wounded places within us. When I think about Two Coyotes Wilderness School, my urge to begin that really came from a deep wound that I had. I think as a young boy, I've always been saddened by the destruction of the environment.
Hmm.
And I also had a really deep sense of loneliness. Like I felt like I didn't fit in with my peers. And um, because of that longing inside of me for belonging, really, um, it gave me I was going to say courage, but it's not courage. But it was a yearning that led me,
Hmm.
in part through pain, to seek something that didn't exist. And so within that, creating a school where we have these beautiful honoring ceremonies at the end of the season where the parents are circled and the mentors are there and the child's called into the center and the mentor shares, um, I want to share with you how grateful we are for you being in our village. And one of the gifts that we see emerging in you is your ability to listen to the forest and your great love and compassion for the natural world and your fierce ability to protect it. And we're so grateful that you bring these gifts into our village. Creating that kind of like um, circle of belonging for all of the children and community really healed a part of me, and was born from that wound and required me to face that. with the help of mentors in order to
Wow.
reconcile that.
Wow. So how old were you when this took place?
Well, a lot of that journey was happening when I was 27 years old in terms of the
Hmm.
reconciling and the creation of the wilderness school. But then there was
Hmm.
also these other periods like, my adolescence was a place of profound loneliness that led
Hmm.
me to move into the forest for 3 months when I was 19 years old and live with my best friend there, and
Hmm.
sent me on spiritual journeys that were like nothing I've ever encountered, fasting for 4 days in nature and those kinds of experience. Yeah.
Hmm. So you had like, because I think a lot of people can relate in some way to this, like it was a pain that kind of took you, you went into the wilderness, and I don't know if the pain happened before or after or during or all of the above, but a lot of us as children go to the wilderness out of escapism. And, it sounded like you said, you spent all this time, just you and a friend, no village, but connecting deeper and going deeper. And I imagine some things were probably healed and maybe other things stirred up, and then you found this community later in your 20s, right? And that's a beautiful journey. And yeah, I think some people can probably relate to that. I think that's what sends a lot of us looking for community sometimes once we have that nature connection time. It's like, I know that rings true for me too, of like, yeah, then I really wanted people to share it with. I wanted village, I wanted community around it. And how beautiful that you found that in your later 20s there. What was that like then, like for you when you found that village or found that community and found these rituals or people who could see you?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember being in a circle with families and kids and just seeing that there was just so many years of relationship,
Hmm.
like seeing someone who's 12 that I've known since they were 5 years old. And I know their siblings and their family, and I've eaten dinner over their house. And having that be, this true with many other people within that circle, and being with a team of nature mentors that I love so deeply and that we've been through so many wild adventures with, um, such a profound sense of belonging that, you know, I would cry at times because felt so moved and so touched. And that
Mm.
hurt and wounded part of me that was longing for so long had found home.
Mm. Beautiful. Yeah. So you found this community in this wilderness school, and I imagine did that shift your sense of purpose in the world?
Yeah, that was like a real core. That was a real core piece for me, and I think it's really fascinating how often our deepest purpose is connected to our wounds,
Mm.
and it did continue to manifest deeper and deeper from there. Yeah,
Mm.
There's this piece that I want to mention,
Mhm.
which is like um, because often our gifts and our longing is connected to our wounds,
I was just going to ask you to go into that deeper. So perfect.
because they're connected to our wounds, it actually makes the work of finding our purpose in some ways painful. And in a culture of happiness and where everyone's trying to avoid going into the darkness and discomfort, it really requires us to sit and reconcile with the wounds of our childhood and the wounds of our life, and to be in relationship with our longing.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, kind of like, you're looking, where's my purpose? Where's my purpose? And it's like,
Mm.
that big, sore, painful thing over there. It's like, I'm not going over there, but I can't find it anywhere. Where is it? And
Yeah.
it's like often, not always, but often, it's associated with the particular ways that we're wounded. There's this story of Parsifal. It's like an Arthurian legend, and
Hmm.
he's like helping this king like cook this sacred salmon. And if you taste the salmon, you get like this special knowledge. And as he's doing it, um, some of the grease falls on his hand and it burns his hand. And reflexively, he puts his hand in his mouth. And like the first person to taste this salmon gets the knowledge of it after it's just delicious salmon, which is still good. But uh, anyway, so Parsifal like ends up tasting this and receiving the knowledge, but it comes with a burn, and so often our greatest gifts and capacities are connected to the places that there's pain, the places that we're afraid to go.
Yeah, that can be a hard lesson to really, I remember first kind of realizing that, and because the pain, we tend to like not want to go there and we just want to do everything but that. And then when it's like, oh no, wait, that's the source of my purpose. And it's really neat how many uh mythological stories there are throughout time, throughout locations around the world, and how much is showing us that there's so many hero stories where the hero gets injured or they're blinded or the healer is blind or injured, and it's just all these stories that just speak to wholeness or healing or living with purpose is not about not having any injury whatsoever. It's not about like I am, this perfectly healthy person. And it's just such a good reminder for us as we're going into our inner work in the world, and on our journey in the world of having those questions like how is my wounding, how is my pain um, helping me? What is the gift in it? Not to see that like it wasn't a bad thing or whatever, but just like, what is it giving me though? It's a way of transforming the narrative and transforming the story into that hero story. And we see the hero's journey, like in every Marvel movie and stuff, like the character almost dies and they go through a really hard moment. And that's what makes for a good story. That's what makes for a good movie. And, I think also like that's what makes for a good life, and we can't really avoid it. I don't know that we can fully avoid those hardships or those hard moments. And so I think the gold in that is to, the quicker we can look at that and be like, okay, these moments are teaching me something and there's some gold in that for me. Gold as in not like material wealth, but inner wealth. Um, then yeah, I think that the quicker we can go on this journey towards, I don't know, what do you call it? Healing, holism. What do you call the journey? Or
Hmm.
how do you think of that?
It's like a journey of soul initiation.
Mm,
Yeah. I think one of the things you're saying, but this gold of it, right? And it comes from this place of hurt, and sometimes it comes from a place of harm. And I want to share in this that just because it can be connected to our gifts in some way doesn't make the harm that's happened to us okay.
hmm.
That abuse or ways that we've been hurt by other people um, is is still not okay. And yet
Right.
through our the mere fact that we are here and alive and that we've been changed, and it's connected us or could connect us to a place of empowerment, um, that we can take those gifts from it, and the actual event can still not be okay that happened.
Mm. Yes. Thank you for saying that. I want to come back a little bit to the previous podcast that I put out there. The one right before this is on people connection. And, I see that as village creating, right? Like when we're creating village, we are talking about connecting to other people. And there's this whole thing called core routines of nature connection. And it often leads me to ask, okay, if there's core routines of nature connection, there must be core routines of people connection, and that's must be then essential for community building, for village building. So what would you say are, if someone were to ask you, such as myself in this moment, if someone were to ask you, what would you say are some of these core routines of people connection, based on your experiences with therapy, with community and village building, looking at that, what are those kinds of patterns that come up, or how can, what are a couple of those exercises, activities, or routines that we could do to help us build those relations in a healthy way?
Yeah, one of the one of the images in my mind as you were sharing about this is like a spider building a web, and that the the community and the culture, as it increases in complexity, as there's more relationships in it, it deepens. And what I was thinking of is about our relationships to people, like questions like, who are your elders?
Mm,
You know, who do you go to for counsel? Do you have a mentor? Um, who are your brothers and sisters and fellows that you're with, you know, on the journey? You have aunties and uncles
mm,
who are like mentors or older brothers or older sisters. Who do you mentor in your life? Um,
mm,
and so one of the things I think is, as we start developing those relationships, we are like in some ways tied into these people. So much of the modern lifestyle is like being this individual, this hyper individualism, and
mhm.
responsibilities to anyone. But yet, by tying ourselves into these connections of relationships and being responsible to people, um, I think that that is part of a core routine of the community connection that you're talking about.
Yeah, I like that. Thanks for that. And so then, what would you say to someone who's out there asking the question, where's my village? I often hear it like that, it's when out of like when we get to that point of desperation and feeling isolated and alone, and it's often parents who are just overwhelmed, and like, gosh, I'm doing this by myself. We're in this nuclear family life where, like you said, it's like rugged individualism, and um, that's often when people hit that point, breaking point almost, where it's like, where is my village? I need these people. And because I think of it as like, hopefully we need to start asking that question when we're before we get to that point, ideally, but I get why people ask it in that moment. But I think it's a continual question. That should be a quest in a way. But what would you say to someone who's asking that?
Yeah. Well, that the emotion behind that. Where's my village? Um, it's a prayer, you know. So at
Mm,
first, I would encourage them to go out into nature and to have a fire, or to um, make an offering, and to put that out to the universe, put that out to the forest or the land. Um, and then, there, I think some of the opportunities would be to do something different.
mm,
So, if a person's wanting village in their life, maybe the ways that they're seeking it are not effective right now. They're not bringing other people in, or people just aren't
mhm,
showing up. And so, the quest and the question is this like moment of like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to go on this journey. I'm gonna have to go into the unknown. I'm gonna have to risk rejection. I might be the one who have to build this village, or at least seek out kindred people. And how am I going to change my life to do that? And am I willing to change my life to do that? Because part of me maybe is choosing to stay in this smaller um, place that's not quite working for me, but I don't necessarily have to face some of these things. And so um, I would tell them to get ready for a courageous journey ahead of them and to do something different.
Yeah, for sure. What can I do? What's my part in it? What changes do I have to make? But yeah, that's awesome. So Justin, how can people connect with you if they're interested in learning more about what you're up to, or do you have any offerings coming up? Go ahead and share.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah. Well, I have a website, justinwildheart.com, and there's some different offerings on there. I do some in-person workshops in Connecticut. I also do some online workshops, and there's one coming up, the Quest for Inner Fire, and it's actually about this topic today that we've been talking about is how can I touch into my purpose, my passion, my meaning? How can I rekindle that fire in my life? And that's going to be beginning mid-March, and registration is open. You can find it through the website justinwildheart.com. So yeah.
That's all, folks. Thanks for listening. If you're enjoying this, remember to leave a review and subscribe.